Hello and welcome to this edition of Central Connecticut Now, the program that brings you closer to the newsmakers in our region and those that cover them. I'm Mike Schroeder, publisher of the New Britain Herald and Bristol Press. And my guest today is the mayor of Bristol, Ellen Zoppo-Sassu.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
I hope I pronounced that right. I zip through it and try and do what I can. And Mayor, tell us what's going on in the city. What are the big things that are happening in your life? Besides, I understand that the air conditioning's out at City Hall on a pretty hot day today.
It is, so it's a pleasure to be here because this does have air conditioning. We are starting with a whole fresh slate because July 1st represents the start of our fiscal year. So we have all of our department heads setting their priorities and looking ahead to see what's going to happen in Bristol for the next 12 years within the purview of their departments. Locally, we are very excited about the continued growth of the farmers market, which is downtown. Obviously, trying to get people to come downtown on a weekend is a long-term goal. And as we start putting pieces together, the farmers market has proven to be a great starter. That now paired with Bristol Health coming online and 4 of the other lots sold with pending construction, hopefully within the next probably 6 months, are all starting to be a great recipe for downtown. The Blues are playing. They're, I think, still in first place. They have a homestand this week. By the time the viewers watch this, hopefully they will be in playoffs. And we have, I'll just do a quick plug, we have about 14 families that are hosting about 20 boys on the roster here in Bristol for the summer. And, you know, I think that shows really Bristol as an all-heart community when you open your home for a summer. We've done it for 5 years. We have great players coming through. You don't see them very often, but it's a great thing for Bristol, and it's great to go to Muzzy Field, which is the best place to watch a ball game anywhere in the state.
Now, I understand that there is a planned, I believe, eatery that's going to go in the corner, the north, I guess North Main, and in the green spot in the corner there of downtown.
Yes, North Main at Riverside. We're in the process of executing a letter of intent, which is the first start with BDA approval and City Council approval. We are going to have almost a 20 to 25,000 square foot building with the primary tenant is a restaurant that has Bristol roots, but will be relocating from Franklin Avenue in Hartford.
That's great to be able to have somebody come back to Bristol.
Yes,
that's the telling thing, and that huge building that Bristol Hospital has put up and just opened, what, a month and a half ago?
It opened the second week of June, and that parking lot has been filled every day.
Wow, wow. So now we've got a parking problem, hopefully not a parking problem. We've got a volume.
These are nice problems to have.
That's right,
So,
finally.
Yeah, if you actually look at the site, if you pretend to be looking at the site from an aerial standpoint, and you look at Bristol Health where they built on the corner of Riverside and Main, and you follow that line to the end of their parking lot, that brings you to what we call Parcel 9. And that is a reserved parcel that the City of Bristol does not currently have for sale. It is going to be surface parking, so as those other sites are developed, and as well as City Hall parking or post office parking, there will be a surface parking lot there.
Our parking.
Your parking. With the eventual goal that there may be a parking structure there as it grows. And then from that parking structure, we will be hugging that railroad embankment with a very nicely landscaped walkway that will lead back to Main Street and will lead down to North Main Street as well.
So the roads that were installed in that area are now going to get filled up and filled up pretty quickly.
Yes, we do have interest on some of the other lots, but they have not gotten to a point where we're ready to discuss them. Still very conceptual, but there is interest, and I do have to credit Bristol Health, excuse me, for really, I think, showing people what can be done.
Well, it's a beautiful building. We've had the opportunity to tour it, and it's really a commitment from the hospital to downtown. What do you think about your first year? You know, now that we're I mean, the first year, the last year, let's just say, of the schedule anyway.
It's been busy. There's a lot going on. I can't say enough for the city department heads and their staff. They really all came together, and I think that we've engaged in a little bit more strategic planning that might have been done in the past. So we're having really thoughtful conversations about how to roll things out. I'm really fortunate to have a very hardworking city council. I've been on the city council in the past years where there's not been an equal division of work or people pulling their weight, and it's very complicated and difficult. So I have 6 members that on any given day I can pick up the phone and say, I need you to cover this or come to this or attend this. And 9 times out of 10, the answer is yes, I'll be there.
Great to be
and they
there.
all are great with their committees and their liaison assignments, and it's been great.
What do you think's been the biggest challenge in the last year?
I think that it's been keeping a watchful eye on the state and ensuring that Bristol continues to get its share of state resources that we should as the 11th largest city. I think that part of that is directly related to their lack of legislative action in terms of the education budgets and how that formula really needs to be revised. I think that we watch the state because they continue to not address some of the special education funding issues that all communities are facing, which have hit Bristol hard. We've had 3 years of deficits that the city's had to cover because we are unable to control those, the regulatory aspects of how you pay for and are funded when you have special education costs. So, and they don't adequately fund it. So we, for excess costs, which is a common term that people will understand, when you exceed an excess cost, you can go into a pool, but we don't get all of that money back. So we get a portion of it back. So the local taxpayers are constantly trying to fund that. So that has been an issue of concern. As we watch the fiscal state, we also look at the local aspects. And we came to the table with our unions, and I had all 7 of our employee groups at the bargaining table this year, which is complicated, especially when it's all feeding into a July 1st fiscal year. We've settled with 3 of them. 2 are still in negotiations, and 1, believe it or not, had a tie vote for ratification. So they need to go back. I know, it's never been done. 51 to 51.
Wow.
So they now need to revote their contract. So the good news is none of them have headed to arbitration, so we have not had to expose the taxpayers to that additional cost. 2 that are still in the process of being settled, I hope don't go that route, but if we have to, we will. But the most impressive thing that I think happened last fiscal year, when I was elected, one of the first things that I realized was that the former controller and administration had not adequately prepared for lack of state funding, and they didn't budget for it. So we were $4 million in the hole in December of 2017. So in addition to that, we had to look at our expenses. We asked the police and the fire unions to come to the table and talk about the pension, because we have one pension fund, but they are recognized individually. So we have general retirement, and then we have police and fire. They agreed to allow us to recognize everything under one umbrella, which saved us huge on actuarial costs as well as evaluation and management. And so that fiscal year, we were able to avoid a $3.6 million contribution to the pension fund. Wow. We do not believe that with this new reorganization that we will have to contribute probably in the next 20 or 30 years, which is over a $50 million savings to the taxpayers. So kudos to the police and fire union for stepping up, being taxpayers, and understanding themselves what that meant for the city. We now have money that can be diverted into other ways of investment or tax relief.
And Bristol seems to have a kind of a special place in terms of pensions, that they really thought ahead to be able to make this possible.
Yes, we, in 1977, I think, we went out to bid for services, because up until that point, all of the city savings were at the Bristol Savings Bank on the corner of Main and Riverside Avenue, earning 1% interest.
Oh my gosh.
So that began the journey, and we have one of the best pension funds that's, you know, in great shape, and we don't have to make pension contributions. That pension contribution in the June of 2018 would have been the first time the city had had to make a pension contribution on its own in over a decade.
Now you're saying that the city doesn't have to make any pension.
Zero.
So they're well into the future.
Yes.
In terms of covering pensions.
Yes,
and most other communities are well in the hole.
I have a colleague who has to issue $17 million in pension obligation bonds every year to cover their expenses. I don't even understand how that could be done. A pension is something that is very attractive as a community to be able to offer that. It helps us recruit employees. It helps us to retain employees. And all around us, I see communities that are converting. They're keeping their pension benefit for those that are vested, but then they're going in a different direction in terms of defined benefit plans for new hires. And I would like to see that Bristol always be a pension community, but we needed some help from our friends in order to maintain
So
that.
they are still a defined benefits structure for retirees, which is very rare now.
Yes,
Almost unbelievable.
it really is. So,
And so, stepping back, you were discussing the issue with, what was it? With people that are, I've completely zapped me. You just keep rolling.
we've covered
so
a few
well.
things. So the other thing we can talk about is Memorial Boulevard, which is on track, and we're getting architectural rendering, and that's going to be a big project for downtown as well.
That's going to be huge.
Yes.
Now, right now, we're still saying that is going to, what's going to go into that building?
So it will be an arts magnet school that has been approved by the State Board of Education. The Bristol Board of Education has deemed it to be an intra-magnet school, which means servicing Bristol first. And if there are slots available, they may be made available to the contiguous towns if they choose to send their students. But the equally important part is that the community theater that was built there by Albert Rockwell in 1921 is going to be restored. So it'll be used both by the school, but also by the community. And that's going to be a huge catalyst for downtown. When you think about people who come to shows and then are looking for someplace to either go before or after, and have that be one of those entertainment hubs for downtown, and another reason for people to come there.
What's the capacity of that theater?
Based on Americans for Disabilities Act requirements, they are going to have to take out some seats, so they have settled on it being a 750-seat theater.
Does that make it the largest theater in Bristol?
In Bristol, yes.
Yeah. So instead of going out of, in the situations where there is an out-of-town event, they'd have to go out, really outside the city limits. And now they'll be able to stay.
Yep, and we will be able to do fun things like summer concerts, rain dates, graduations, all kinds of things can actually be slotted in there as well.
How much is that project?
We have a $54 million project right now on the books. We are going through all of the engineering costs and evaluating that. We have D'Amato Downs on board as our construction manager, and they're right now in the process of checking those numbers. And we actually have hired a third party to also check numbers, because we want to be able to narrow that focus and make sure that we know exactly what we're doing with those construction documents before they go out to bid, so there's no surprises.
But we're talking about a big, probably the city's biggest construction project in a long time.
It is, and we do know that there's going to be issues. We know that the plaster in the theater, which is original, is not going to be able to be retained. We're concerned about the size of the stage. We're concerned about that was built for a school, so there's no green room area, there's no changing areas, there's a load-in capacity that isn't present. So there's all these things that have to, while maintaining the historic integrity of the building, have to be worked into the design.
Have any kind of timeline?
I'm hoping that the theater will come online sooner rather than later, but I think we're looking at fall of 2022 for the first class. And I think they're going to roll the classes in. I think they're going to start with middle school and have those middle schoolers continue through, and then, fill it that way over time.
Now, is this going to be a Bristol school, part of the Bristol system?
Yes.
So it's going to be an expansion of the Bristol school system. Are there now more kids in Bristol? Or is it going to be a shift from other schools? Or?
There will probably be a shift, and they also have a facilities plan on the books that they have not really fully implemented because they're waiting to see what the impact will be for Memorial Boulevard. I also think that we right now have 300 children that leave the city every day to go to magnet schools in other communities. So there may be some opportunity for them to come back.
Them back.
We can magnet them back and not pay, because right now we're paying that tuition to go to those schools.
And it's a price that is much more economical for them to do.
Yes.
To serve here.
We hope so. But again, education's important. And so when people start complaining about what we pay, that's the calling card. People are going to come or not come to a community based on what they believe the education system is.
And in the last, 5 years, there's been 2 other schools built from scratch, right?
Yes.
So there's been a lot of investment by the community into education here.
As there should be. And as I say to some of my empty nesters, you live in a neighborhood where people should be lining up to buy your house. Your house is your nest egg. You are expecting to leverage this much money out of your house when it's time for you to retire, relocate, downsize, whatever it is that you plan to do. And right now, I feel that the quality is just a little below that. So they need to understand that our investment in education is benefiting them as well, even though they don't have kids in the school system. The more people who want to come into our neighborhoods to be near these quality schools, it's going to drive up the cost of people's homes, and they will realize full value.
The first thing people look for
Yes.
is the quality of the schools before they move into a community.
Absolutely.
And your goal is to make sure that they do.
And that our homeowners get the full value on those housing prices as well.
Have you seen any kind of shift from your, I'm sure you talk to the real estate community.
It's hard. It's anecdotal. I know that when I ran in 2017, I looked at the data. And at that point in time, there were 650 homes for sale. And comparatively, a lot of other communities had homes for sale as well.
Sure.
It depends on what season you're looking at. Obviously, home sales are driven up in nicer weather. So I didn't really read that much into it, other than that it was an interesting factoid. Mm-hmm. So a gentleman called the office last week and was yelling at me about something and said to me, "Did you know there's 300 homes for sale in Bristol?" And I thought, that's great.
Wow, that's the best news I had today.
Exactly. He didn't much appreciate my answer, but I think that there are ebbs and flows with everything. I can't take credit for it, nor could anyone else. It's just one of those things where there's cycles, and we hope that we're always on the top end of that cycle.
Now, my understanding is that there's still some work to be done on the West End, that there's still a plan, that they're working on some reconfiguration there. How is that going?
Working with Connecticut DOT is interesting. Between them and Route 6, I feel like I speak with DOT officials frequently. But that being said, the West End plan is funded and it's on the books, and that's half the battle. Mm-hmm. So the realignment of Route 69 and 72 is scheduled to start in 2020. There is some property taking that will happen. Mm-hmm. We are hoping that that does not have to be done by eminent domain. They typically will pay 20% above market value in order to smooth the way. We're looking at traffic realignments. We're looking at having the West End parking lot replaced further up because we want to take that as part of the widening. We are looking at some streetscape improvements there. We are looking to have people understand that this is a gateway up through on Route 72. If you're coming from out of town to a Blues game or to use Rockwell Park or to do anything, we need this area to look good. So the city is prepared to invest, and we're asking the homeowners and the property owners in that area to invest as well. There is a West End Association. They are usually at the forefront of some issues. I was there in the West End this weekend, as was Justin Malley this morning, and we both were not happy with the condition. And so we actually just spoke with one of our public works supervisors as I was coming here, and there's going to be a concerted effort to go through and on the city-owned parcels to raise the standard. There's, it's summer. The rain has been unbelievable. There's weeds everywhere.
Makes everything look worse.
We're coming through and we're going to take care of the weeds. We're going to clean up the parking lot. We know we have some stuff to do. But meanwhile, we feel that if we set the standard on our property, we're expecting everyone else to do it as well. We have somebody, a new investor landlord in the West End who's purchased quite a few pieces of property. We've asked that landlord to come in for a meeting because we're not quite sure that we're on the same page with them in terms of their maintenance schedule. So we try to be very proactive while addressing some of these challenges, knowing that it is a very difficult neighborhood due to the proximity of the buildings to each other, the density of the apartments, but we do have a standard and we're going to be enforcing it.
Do you think blight is still a problem in Bristol?
I think blight is very subjective. Blight in my neighborhood is very different than your neighborhood, than Cedar Lake, than Chippens Hill, but it's still all about quality of life. And if you have a problem in your neighborhood that's making you uncomfortable or your neighbors uncomfortable, then we want to hear about it. We will not, however, continue to be pulled into neighbor versus neighbor disputes that are really civil matters. And it's unfortunate that some people feel that we're the court of last resort. We will redirect, we will give advice, we will do whatever we can within the public specter, but at the end of the day, most people do end up having to resolve it civilly. And it's really sad when it comes to that in a neighborhood. We probably have 4 active neighbor disputes right now that we're trying to mediate. And they're exhausting for the people involved, for people who are just trying to enjoy their property, for the neighbors who get sucked in. And at the end of the day, everybody just wants to enjoy their property.
Yeah. One thing we haven't talked about is that, downtown, we've still got the situation with the supermarket that has gone through like 4 different owners, and a lot of effort and a lot of time and a lot of money has been poured into that to try and make something of it. Any news from there? It just kind of...
That's one of the very problem properties that we would love to see something happen with, but the landlord and owner is not someone who is easy to work with. And when people assess values to their property that are absolutely not realistic, you're stuck. You're stuck in a situation that until you can enforce it through foreclosure or back taxes or blight, or any other type of code enforcement activity, you're stuck. And it's a very frustrating situation. There's a few of those throughout town that are very complicated. Chick Miller being another one. That is being worked through the New Jersey court system. We have been waiting for a year for that to be finalized because there are 2 different partners that are at war over not just this property, but several others. And until that can get resolved,
you keep getting dragged into internal things.
Right.
But you're stuck.
We're stuck. So if they pay their taxes and if they clean up the property when we call them to do so, there's not much we can do except wait.
And it's kind of too bad because the bike shop has taken over the old Bristol Press property there.
And they've done a wonderful job.
Hopefully there's going to be something in the contiguous piece that's there. And there's so many opportunities in that area. But you build around it.
You do what you can and you hope for the best with the rest. And when they're finally ready, which properties inevitably are, then you're ready to work with the new owners.
Maybe, as we wind down our interview here, what's one of the things you'd like to say to the public that they can help be a part of the rebirth of downtown and the extension of making Bristol a better place? So
we talk a lot, City Council and the department heads and our staff, about what is that key message. And I think that we've all agreed that people in Bristol who live and work here want to feel good about where they live and work. So, there's been a lot of positives. I think the positives have outweighed the negatives, although we're still working on some of the challenges. The opioid crisis is hitting everybody. Cleanliness, blight issues, code enforcement issues, the Route 6 traffic issues, challenges. Check, check, check. We all know those are challenges. But I really would encourage people to just try to be glass half full instead of glass half empty. You have a litter problem in your neighborhood. Well, organize. Organize your neighbors and come out. We have 25,000 people that are going to be arriving in Bristol at the end of July through the 2nd week of August for the Little League tournaments.
Right.
Let's put on our best face. And if that means that we all get out there on our morning walks or when we're with our dogs or doing whatever and we're picking up litter, then so be it. Call in the addresses. We are close to, but not quite ready yet, to preview a new app called Click It, Fix It. And people can use their phones to take a picture of something, whether it's a shopping cart or tall grass or whatever, and that app will deliver that address and that problem to the city using GPS coordinates. So instead of wondering where that, someone will say, well, there's a shopping cart on Merriman Street. Okay, where? Where on Merriman Street? It will deliver it. So we're going to actually offer that to the public to help them be our eyes and ears on the street.
We can't wait to use it, and I really appreciate your time with us.
Okay.
Learned a lot about Bristol, and almost everything's positive.
Yes.
Looking up, looking forward.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Central Connecticut Now. We hope you'll join us next time when we have another newsmaker from our region. Have a great week.